Hey, the hat at first is because I didn't think you should be subjected to where my hair is today, and it's what? 1:30, so I'm apparently in no hurry to fix it. Secondly, this is my new hot, sexy way of wearing my shirts. Notice 2 buttons open. All right, the real truth is, I can no longer get the second button to close given my current weight and the man boobs that I'm growing. It's embarrassing, but I thought you should know. All right, here is a picture of second wife, now deceased, Fifi. And, oh, I'm in there too. This is when we lived in Carter Lake in a new condo, beautiful. This is a Christmas picture. Notice that it says Sprinkling Fifi. That's what this section is about. And with that, I'll get going. This is called the Sprinkling Fifi Tour, and I honestly think it's the best thing I've ever done outside of procreation. It was a journey I took. I'll explain over a period of 2 years. And on the way, I wrote a 188-page book about the trip, or trips. And this story I've always thought would make a tremendous romantic comedy or just romancer type movie, a la The Notebook. But I haven't gotten around to writing that. I did, however, within the past month, have what I think are great ideas how to proceed with that, and I think that's next step. Okay, for starter, you will hear me refer to Kathy as Fifi. And by the way, you may all know this, certainly the majority do, but for those who may not, here's why. We had not gone out yet, and I went to her house for the first time. Let me get rid of these pain in the butt lights on my eyes. Poop-a-doop. Come on. I'm telling you what. Here, maybe. I am flat getting to be useless. And of course you'll ask, getting to be? Okay. So, would make a great screenplay. We knew each other from work, met 2, 3, 4 years before we ended up becoming an item. And I saw her a lot over 3 months and then didn't see her for years. Sherry fired me, and Fifi was my #1 draft pick. And she didn't want to go out immediately. She had just gotten out of a relationship and said she wasn't ready. And I said, no problem. Let's write to each other. So we wrote letters. These were all 2 to 4 pages long. We probably wrote 25 each over the course of a month. Then it was time to go out. So I went to her house to pick her up. She opens the door and I start laughing. She's kind of bewildered, and what's the laughing about? And I said, you're a complete Fifi. And by that I meant her house, the interior was so girly. To me, it was comedy at its finest. I won't go into all the touches, but you open it up, it's a chick house. She goes, Fifi, that's a dog name. If I'm Fifi, you're Sparky. And that's all we ever called each other, to my best recollection. Okay, Sprinkling Fifi tour. We were driving down the road to Ashfall Fossil Beds State Park in central Nebraska. And she was driving, and I was working on our wills. Logical, on effectively a date. And since it was about the wills, which are about death, I said, you know, Fifi, we should make a promise to each other that when one of us dies, the survivor goes to every place we've ever been together to memorialize that relationship and that person. So that's what happened. She died one day, and I began the Sprinkling Fifi tour. Within a month, I was on a plane to Seattle, where some big things had happened. Before leaving for the first trip, I met with her brother Skip and sister-in-law Mary in Minneapolis, where they lived. And we called that the Task Force on Sprinkling Fifi. And there we put together a little container with 40 little bitty bags with drawstrings that would hold enough Fifi ashes to cover the 40 places I was going to go. Therein, the sprinkling part. Before I get into the travels and the locations, I want to mention the word divorce. I put it in quotation marks. Here's what happened. In Fifi's last 2 months, if that, she came to me, interestingly enough, and said, I think we need to get divorced so it would prevent me from having any access to everything you built in business finances. Because I am losing my mind and I worry about it. So we got divorced. We still owned the condo in Carter Lake. And Iowa has insane divorce laws. We showed up at the courthouse in Council Bluffs at 10 in the morning. By 2 in the afternoon, the divorce was final. In Nebraska, it takes time to even get in front of a judge to get the process rolling, and there are several filings you have to make. And then once the divorce is granted, it's 90 days until it's final. Well, I knew all that, and we just needed a quickie administrative thing, so that's what we did. So, some of my friends knew that. Primarily, some of my lady friends knew that, including good buddy Barb Lamori, who in the previous section I wrote to her the 4-page Do I Miss Kathy letter. So a very good friend. Well, Barb and several of the women couldn't believe that I was listed in the obituary as husband Phil. They knew I had this Iowa divorce. The reason I've always put it in quotation marks include things like this. She was bankrupt at the time she died. She had spent $50,000 over 3 months on useless things. Things you couldn't return, things with no retail value. It made for big complications where there didn't have to be any. So I handled that whole thing with the bankruptcy attorney. And it cost me $11,000. Phil, the husband, paid the $11,000. Other things I took care of. She had leased 2 vehicles in the few months since she had left me. I got those cleared up. Ryan and I cleaned out her apartment. I was shown as husband Phil because that's the way her family treated it. So it's kind of like none of your damn business to the rest of them. There were I gave the eulogy at church. Church during her funeral. 2 pages, 15 minutes. Again, little weird for an ex. Adam put together a nice video thing, PowerPoint, but it rolled over every slide of her and her life. And that was running at the funeral. I wrote the best poem I've ever written, still true 20 years later. and put that on a table as you came in. And I mean, there were 2 or 3 or 4 more things. So, husband fell, divorce. Bad story, sad story, yes. Yes, but that's just what it was. You know, as I go through here, in chronological order, I'm just going to say the names of where I went. Mount St. Helens, Seattle, the Oregon coast. Then we drove from Oregon to Lake Tahoe to Yosemite. That's what I did too. Yosemite National Park. Lutsen, Minnesota, which was a third of the days we spent on our brief 17-day honeymoon. Chicago, Niagara Falls, Boston, all places I went because we were there. The Florida Keys, Key West and Cozumel, Tampa, Las Vegas, Hoover Dam, the Grand Canyon, Arches National Park, Winter Park, the bridges of Madison County over toward Des Moines. West Bend, Iowa had a grotto made of small stones that a priest put together over dozens of years. So I went there. Ashfall Fossil Beds State Park. Crane viewing outside of Grand Island. The Kearney Arch. Rocky Mountain National Park. Devil's Tower. And again, you'll get sick of it, but every one of these places, not only had we been together, but I retraced. Took 2 years, took 17,000 miles. A few more. Mount Rushmore, Toadstool Park in western Nebraska. Particularly cool, I recommend it. Scotts Bluff, Chimney Rock, Kansas City, Tulsa, Bull Shoals Lake down in Missouri, Lake Hattie in Minnesota near Minneapolis, the famed Mitchell, South Dakota Corn Palace. And last, I tried to let the people who bought Fifi's home let me in to take 2 or 3 pictures of living room area, basically. Wrote him a letter, explained that she lived there, the death, the tour, and I'd love to have the opportunity to take a couple of pictures. Didn't respond. Okay, and last couple of thoughts. I have a chapter called Grief and Guilt. Anybody has grief after a close one dies. Nothing unusual in that. I had a bunch. I remember one way it exhibited. Eric and I were living in my second Timber Lodge Lake house that Fifi and I lived in. And I remember being curled up on the carpeted living room floor, screaming and sobbing for multiple minutes, multiple times. Now, I've always thought it was extremely nice of Eric not to walk in on me when I was in the middle of that craziness. Recently, he told me, I believe I have this correct, that he didn't hear it. If that's true, that's a testament to the quality of the building in that house. So, grief, then guilt. There again, anyone close to somebody who dies in that fashion has guilt. It can be tremendous, weighty guilt. It can last several years, if not forever. I had serious guilt, just like I did when Adam died. And the guilt was, even though I had done everything I could do for her, she still slowly slipped away. And what I did ended up making effectively no difference. That bothered me for several years. And then one day, you just get a different attitude about it. I remember my psychiatrist and psychologist saying, you don't have any guilt. It's not your fault. You didn't take her life. She decided to. Eventually, I understood that. Still to today, it's kind of hard to feel that way. I have left massive amounts out of this, but that's okay. I mean, shit, I could go on forever, and I won't. So, the Sprinkling Fifi tour. I, nor anyone I've known in the ensuing 20 years, when somehow or another that works into the conversation, and it's been dozens of times, never known anyone else who's done anything similar. That's no brag, just fact. The brag is that we had the kind of relationship that I felt compelled to do it. Again, chunks of it left out. Have a lovely day.